All right, the January 2021 Hunt Panel discussion is going live right now. Let's do it. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Testing. Okay, we're live. We're rolling. Here we go. Guys, welcome to episode number 54. This is Jim Huntsman, the host of the Western Huntsman Podcast, coming at you from the Broken Tine studio in Hayden, Idaho. I about ran out of air there. How you guys doing? I know I'm doing good up here in North Idaho. We're just kind of watching this crazy shit go down all over the place within the country and just hoping things don't implode, you know. So welcome to the episode. We're going to stick to talking hunting on this show because that's what I like to talk about the most. And I got a great episode lined up for you guys today. And this is going to go along the lines of the hunt panel that I told you we were going to be doing, once or twice a month. And so far it is once a month because they're kind of hard to coordinate everybody to get on at the same time and record and all that. But this one is a really good one. The topic for this month is called the Adult Onset Hunter. And what I did was I found three hunters that have just been doing it for no less than 1 year or no more than 3 years to talk about what it's like being an adult onset hunter and how they came about becoming a hunter and things along that topic. It's a really good discussion. And what my thought was I wanted to get people like kind of all over the West to talk about this, and I managed to do that for the most part. I am missing somebody from like the Southwest area, but that's okay. From Western Washington, I've got my pal Will Weber, and from Rifle, Colorado, I've got my pal Mike Kuper, and from up in my neck of the woods, I've got my pal Jonathon Uresti. Shit. I hope I pronounced that right. Hey, buddy, if I didn't pronounce that right, I'll buy you a beer. Sorry about that. But so anyway, the point being, we've got different people from kind of different backgrounds with different perspectives as to how they got involved with hunting and how it's worked out for them. So you guys are really going to like this. Before we get into that, I want to talk real quick about the trivia question that we had from last week's episode. And that question was, what subspecies of elk has the largest antlers, and what subspecies of elk has the largest body? So this one's tricky. Okay, so right now, living elk, subspecies. The Rocky Mountain elk has the largest antlers in North America. So if you got that, you got it right. For largest body, that would be the Roosevelt elk. I told you guys it wasn't the same elk. I give you a hint. However, there's like a caveat on this one, which is really interesting. The right answer would have been an extinct subspecies of elk called the Irish elk. And it's funny, I actually didn't know that when I recorded the episode, and I started looking into it a little bit deeper after I recorded and put the episode out so I could be prepped for this week. And I'm just a damn good student. I tell you what. Anyway, check that out. And that Irish elk popped up, and a few of you wrote in talking about the Irish elk. So pretty interesting if you think about it. And it's just we're going to have another. So anyway, the point being, if you answered that, and whether you were right or wrong, if you answered that question, you wrote in and you used the subject line, you put in the subject line trivia or trivia question, whichever one works for me, I don't care. I entered you guys into the drawing that we're going to be having in March, and it's going to include a Phelps package, an elk calling package, and probably some Western Huntsman swag. So keep doing that because we're going to have another trivia question next week. And I don't have one for you this week because I'm trying to keep this intro super short so we can get right into it with the hunting panel. So that is for the January hunting panel, is the Adult Onset Hunter that I was telling you about. We're going to have another one coming out in February, and that one's going to be a little bit more based in like draws and getting tags and hunters that go to different states and hunt. Because I think that one thing I've learned from getting emails and messages from you guys listening is there are a lot of you that like to travel to different states and hunt. And I'm with you. You're one of my peeps. I like to travel to different states and hunt. And so we're going to talk about that on the next hunter panel coming up. So we've had the elk panel back in December. So if you haven't listened to that one, you got to check that one out. That was with Dirk Durham, Chris Rowe, and Joe Gillia. And it was a really good episode. It was really popular. Appreciate all the downloads we got on that. That was cool. And so this month it is the Adult Onset Hunter, Mike, Will, and John. They're going to tell you all about it, and hope you guys enjoy it. Next month is going to be about tags and draws and traveling to different states and talking about all things non-resident kind of in a way. And then the panel after that I haven't decided, but I actually have a couple of ideas, but I do want to get your guys' take on that. If you have an idea for the hunter panel for March, like a topic idea, we've talked elk, we're talking adult onset hunters, we're talking tags and draw systems in different states. What other topic would you like to hear about? Like I said, I've got some ideas, but if you guys have one that is just really stands out and you think it'd be a good topic or you want to be on that one or whatever, let me know. Write to me at jim@thewesternhuntsman.com and I'll check that out. Guys, without further ado, let's get into it with John, Will, and Mike down in Colorado, and let's kick it off. Here we go. All right, guys. Today, I am doing a really special episode along the lines of the hunting panels that we've been talking about on the show in the past here. We started off with the elk panel, and this month what we're doing is kind of a new idea, and it's called the Adult Onset Hunter panel. And we have three really cool dudes on the show today, and I want to introduce them. I'm going to have each one of them tell them a little bit about themselves, and we're going to roll right into this conversation. So first of all, guys, Will, Mike, and John, I really appreciate you guys being on the show, and it is a pleasure, and I think we're going to get a lot of really cool information out of this, so I appreciate it, first of all. And I have got from Washington, Will Weber, from Rifle, Colorado, Mike Kuper, and somebody that is practically my neighbor, it sounds like, John up in North Idaho. John, what part of North Idaho are you in?
I'm in Sagal.
Oh, okay. So you're about a half an hour up the road from me.
Yep, just south of the Long Bridge.
And we have the point with this is these guys, either I reached out to them or they reached out to me after I kind of made a call, like I don't know, what do you call that? Like a casting call? That sounds pretty legitimate, right? So it's like a casting call that we did, and they all met the parameters of their adult onset hunters. They've gone out probably no more than about 3 seasons under their belt, and I think that both veteran hunters and new hunters and adult onset hunters and youth hunters and everybody, we're just going to be able to get a lot of information and learn a lot out of this. So why don't we start with Will? Will, why don't you tell us where you're from and a little bit about your background, what you do, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, my name's Will Weber. My buddies call me Iron Will. I'm based out of Marysville, Washington, about 30 minutes north of Seattle. I was born and raised here. I got 2 young boys, Liam, who is about to turn 7, and my baby boy, Drew, who is about to turn 3.
Oh, nice.
My beautiful wife, Kelsey, and I have been together for 16 years. We met in high school and been married for 10 this coming year.
Good deal.
This last year, I was able to connect with a pretty neat and really tight backcountry family that kind of welcomed me in and have been mentoring me. And we got some pretty cool and some pretty big things coming in 2021. So
You're talking about Johnny Mac, right? The Soulful Hunter podcast?
yeah, I mean, I'll give you just a little bit of background before we get too far into that and let the other guys jump in here. But Johnny Mac with Washington Backcountry and the Soulful Hunter podcast. He's actually been my biggest inspiration this last year for getting into it, and it was one vulnerable phone call to him when he reached out to me, and I actually ended up doing my very first big game hunt with him and his team. And over this last year, he's quickly become one of my best friends. So,
man, I got to tell you, like if there's somebody that you're going to learn to hunt from, Johnny Mac is one of the dudes I would recommend. He's such a good guy. He's got a great podcast called The Soulful Hunter.
Soulful Hunter, yep. Tremendous guy.
Yeah, great guy. So that's awesome. He actually recommended you to me for this show. So excited about that. We'll get more into detail with that. Mike, you want to pick up from there from down in Colorado and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I was born and raised in Colorado. I've worked for the Rifle Police Department for the past 20 years here on the kind of the western slope of the state. I'm about 90 miles from the Utah border, so I'm still in the mountains, a little bit of high desert. I hunted a bit as a kid. Never got anything. Lifelong unsuccessful hunter. I bow hunted then, and I did a little rifle hunting. And then about a few years ago, I always enjoyed shooting a bow, and I kind of got back into archery, doing some 3D and some indoor archery, and that kind of got me back into bow hunting. A little bit kind of opposite of Will. I end up through work schedules and things like that, I just end up hunting alone. So I've been solo hunting the past 3 years for elk and elk, deer, and bear here. And, and that's kind of, it has, plenty of its own challenges. I've been backpack hunting, kind of a mixture of backpack and day hunting. I live in great elk country. That's the beautiful thing.
You do. And I want to tell you, Mike, too, and I speak for many people in this audience that appreciate your service as a policeman, and it's a tough job, and we're sure happy to have guys like you out there like you willing to do this.
Absolutely.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Did I cut you off, or were you finished there? Or?
No, that's pretty much it.
Cool. Well, again, thanks for what you do, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you, and really, really appreciate it. So, John, that leaves us with you, my friend, up there in Segal, Idaho. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, Jonathon Uresti. So moved up here.
Wait. John, do you prefer Jonathon or John?
To my friends, I go by John. Jonathon has been, more of a professional name I've been going by as I get older.
Okay.
So you can call me John, Jim.
All right, I appreciate it. We're friends, right?
So, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, moved to North Idaho out of a draw of a hat from South Lake Tahoe in Northern California 2.5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, my girlfriend and I decided we were going to move from Tahoe, where we wouldn't be able to ever buy a house, and this is where we landed.
How'd you guys pick North Idaho?
So I had a buddy I worked with for Tahoe Sport Fishing who was born up here in Coeur d'Alene, and then she was working at the casinos as a cocktail server, talking to people about who, what, when, where they're from, and all that. And so we had Vermont, Colorado, Oregon, and North Idaho, and we both drew North Idaho, and this is where we are.
And so that because that's quite a spread, like Vermont versus North Idaho. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That was her choice. That was her choice. That wasn't mine.
She liked the Vermont idea, huh? Well,
yeah.
I tell you what, it's for being a hunter, I think you guys made the right call.
Well, and so I'm grew up as a fisherman. Fished, my whole life. Caught my first fish at like 18 months old.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. Little stick and, piece of string and a worm, but.
Right on.
So I grew up a fisherman. Go ahead.
Oh, no, keep going, man.
Okay.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, it's all right. Grew up a fisherman. Got a buddy when I was about 15 who was into hunting and started going with him here and there. Never shot a couple ducks here and there, and some doves, but never any big game animals. And as you grow older, you grow apart. And then we moved up here and figured why not start hunting. So
yeah, gotcha. So how many seasons have you been out?
2 seasons.
2 seasons. So you're 2 seasons into it. Will, you mentioned this was like your first season.
Yep.
And Mike, you had gone a few times as a kid, and how many as an adult have you been out hunting?
3. This past was my 3rd season.
This was your 3rd season. All right, cool. Mm-hmm. So now we got kind of an idea of who everybody is, and just so the audience knows, I didn't know any of this before we actually jumped on, so we're all kind of learning together here. So I want to talk about how we go from, we're going through life, and we may have views on hunting, or maybe you didn't, and you're kind of, I don't know how to explain it other than you're chugging along and all of a sudden it hits you. I want to be a hunter, and I want to know how that process happens. Because it's so very varied in terms of, like, I grew up hunting, and most of the people that I hunt with grew up hunting, with the exception of somebody that I've taught to hunt who grew up in Las Vegas and had never done it before, and I got to teach him how to hunt, and that was a really cool experience for me. And so I'm curious, like, what was your guys' view on hunting prior to you starting to be or becoming a hunter? Before you became a hunter, what was your view on hunting? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. For me, I grew up I was actually raised in Enumclaw, Washington, which is it's a farming community, small town. Everybody knows everybody. I got 3 brothers. We all did K through 12 there. So you run across the same teachers, that type of town. Everybody hunts there, except for me and a few of my friends who were in sports. It was kind of either you played sports or you hunted.
I know that feeling.
And I always had an itch to hunt. My couple of my uncles who live back in the Midwest, my mom's side, they're hunters, but I wasn't really privileged with the ability to really get to know them growing up. But I did know that they hunted. And then a few people on my wife's side hunt down in California, like wild pigs and stuff like that. And to me, hunting it's that old cliche, like you said, Jim. It seemed like one of those things that was, a father or grandfather passed down to a son, and you come up in it, and then that's what you are. But I didn't grow up in that. Nobody in my family were gun owners. Nobody in my family hunted. Then, but I have kind
Will,
of. Yeah, go ahead.
You had mentioned you'd always had this itch for hunting.
Yeah.
What stopped you from being a hunter earlier?
Well, kind of like I had spoke with Johnny about in depth quite a bit on his podcast and whatnot. The hunting community from the outside looking in is intimidating. And it's not having you get this idea that from, veteran hunters and stuff like that it's not something you just jump into. They're not willing to take you out and show you stuff. Because there's to me, there's this stigma around, taking them out, that I'm showing them my spots and I'm putting them on animal and this, that. And so it's a matter of you kind of fall into just what you're comfortable doing. So like I summed it up as, for me personally, growing up, and not like an arrogant thing, but I played sports and I was athletic. I had a lot of friends who were in that type of activity and stuff. So it's like, everything that I seemed to get involved in, I was in the upper tier of being decent at. So you kind of naturally, I fell into this life of following the things that I'm good at, that I know, that aren't that intimidating. And then finally, when I hit 30 the other year, I just decided to make myself vulnerable. That was my intent for the year, was to become vulnerable, put myself out there, knowing that I'm going to probably dive into a community where I know the least of the people I'm probably going to be around. And that totally turned out to be the case. But, the hunting community, there is a large community out there that is willing to do exactly that and mentor people, take them under the wing or put them in contact with people like Johnny referring me to you to talk about this, or my buddy Drew referring me to Johnny. It's a lot more open of a network than I think it's made out to be.
Yeah, that's one of the questions that came to mind when you were describing that is, when you'd mentioned that from an outsider looking in, the hunting community seemed intimidating and maybe not as open as you'd like to see. And for me, I want that to change. I want that to change for sure. And I know
100%.
some people might roll their eyes when I say something like that because, we talk a lot about how crowded the woods are and how many hunters there are and non-residents this and residents that and all these things that create a lot of infighting amongst the community. But all that aside, it's critical that we keep our hunting numbers up. And so I do want that to change. But you had mentioned that and the intimidating factor. Once you got into hunting and were exposed to the hunting community, did that change your perspective as to how the hunting community is at all, or was it kind of what you expected?
It definitely changed in the sense that I do think that there's still outliers out there, and there's definitely a community of veteran hunters out there that are old school and still probably don't, like you said, they probably don't agree with that outlook of wanting to bring in a bunch of, and new hunters. It's across the board. I mean, it's not a 10-year-old. It's not a 20-year-old. I mean, it can be anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I just turned 31. There's guys in their 40s, 50s that are just going out for the first time. There's our kids. I want to raise my kids in that type of provider lifestyle. So it definitely changed I didn't realize how big of a network you could get into once I met Johnny and his buddy Tony and kind of the guys at Washington Backcountry. And then that opened a bunch of doors to a whole new community. And then ever since I did the Soulful Hunter podcast, I've had veteran and new hunters reaching out to me, saying that episode was super inspiring, that they're getting a lot of, military vets are now taking chances and getting out in the field and
awesome.
It's just, it feels good to inspire people. And, I feel like I'm kind of a perfect candidate for getting into pushing that message, because I was definitely not one who was one to make myself vulnerable or reach out or do things like that. And one phone call to Johnny when he told me to give him a call, which was at the time was not something I would normally do. I don't know. I've never met him. I just called him and it was a brotherhood started, and it's just been, I mean, I just capped awesome. my first year of hunting, and I'm doing my second podcast talking about my journey. I mean, it's pretty wild.
No, that is super wild, man. I've been hunting all my life. Like I told you, I never went on a hunting podcast until I started my own. So that's pretty fantastic. Really cool story. Love hearing that kind of stuff. And gosh, just another thanks and shout out to Johnny Mack for setting such a good example. And admittedly, I have not listened to that episode on purpose because I didn't want to have any kind of inside information on you prior to you coming on this episode. So now I'm excited. I'm going to go back and listen to that episode. So let's switch gears to Mike and kind of go with the same question, Mike. How did you view hunting prior to you becoming a hunter? I know you had some time as a kid hunting, and then you kind of it went away or whatever. You stopped hunting, probably pretty focused on your career and things of that nature. So how did you view hunting?
I grew up in not so much my immediate family as hunters, but my cousins, uncles, everyone hunted a lot of subsistence hunting. Growing up. So I was always interested in it, as well as always an avid hiker, and just spending time in the backcountry for as long back as I can remember. But again, my immediate family wasn't that into it. So those hiking trips, and backpacking and camping were all done. I mean, from very young, essentially doing that stuff by myself or occasionally with my cousins who were quite significantly older than I was. So, and they were the ones, in fact, that did take me hunting before I would go, start to try to go out on my own. But But as I grew older, I think never really connecting with any animals. And then as I grew older, I just really focused on, to some degree on my career, but I really got into rock climbing and mountaineering, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was again, I really liked archery, but I ended up having an accident where I was a mechanic for a while and ended up cutting a portion of my middle finger off. And this occurred kind of before releases were a thing. I'm 50, so we're talking like, 19, the late 80s, early 90s, and shooting a bow, shooting bear bow, with no release, missing a chunk of your middle finger. I kind of hung up the bow. That was the end of that, and I never really I never really picked it back up. Never had any opposition to it. I mean, a lot of the part of the issue was switching jobs or switching career fields. A lot of the guys I worked with hunted, so they would have seniority and get hunting season off. I'd always end up working, so that you just don't. I seem to have less and less, even though I live in great country for it, less and less opportunity. And then things I still battle with is just a little bit of uncertainty about breaking down an animal, or how far back can I go. I'm in decent shape, but when you knock an elk, how far back am I willing to go? And have to deal with that.
Yeah, packing one of those suckers out. I'll bet like having that experience with the mountaineering stuff that you were into, did that help a lot for hunting?
Yeah, it did. It definitely did. I am very comfortable. I'm also the vice president of our search and rescue team here, so I'm very comfortable in the backcountry. I use a GPS a lot, but I always have a map and a compass, and I enjoy orienteering, so I like working with maps and kind of reading terrain, and it was just, I don't want to say it was a natural progression, but it's something I was very interested in. When then you start putting in, looking for stuff rather than just out there hiking around. I'm out there trying to find, where am I going to find animals, trying to equate like what I'm seeing on a map or on Google Earth to real topography, and connect the dots as to where am I going to find animals, and how could I get in there, dealing with wind and things like that. So, mentally, I like those kinds of challenges.
You like putting the pieces of the puzzle together on a hunt. You're one of those kind of guys, right?
Yes, for sure. And then having that comfort, just like I said, that, I don't get weirded out by weather. Things go wrong, back there, but I don't know. I enjoy being back there, and I think I would probably enjoy it more being able to hunt with somebody. I mean, be able to share a camp with somebody. Maybe I don't know that I'd want to hunt with someone, if you know what I'm.
So you're mainly hunting solo then? That's what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah. I hunted turkeys once with someone. The rest of the time I've been hunting by myself.
Gotcha. And I think a lot of hunters, they get this kind of impression, or I don't know if that's the right way to put it. They get a sense of people have these preferences as to whether they're kind of group friend hunters versus solo hunters. I'm definitely a solo hunter, but that does not take away from the fact that I love the camaraderie and going hunting with other people and friends and family, because there's something to be said for that. And that's a big deal. But there's also something to be said for being way out there on your own in the woods. And it's just like you against nature, you know what I mean? And so it's really hard sometimes, when some certain invites come up and it's like, man, that sounds great, but I'm going out on my own this time, but that's always super interesting. Mike, I have a couple of questions for you that they're a little bit off topic. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So the first one is being kind of along the lines of you're in the search and rescue, right?
Yes.
Can you give us a little bit of insight as to like one of the biggest things that triggers a search and rescue operation that people make the mistake of doing, and it kind of puts them in that predicament?
Yeah, I mean, it's for sure. It's just a lack of preparation. I mean, I would say there's two things that are the most common in kicking off a rescue, and it's just maybe a lack of preparation, or kind of goes hand in hand, but some weather that was really unseasonal weather. This year, I mean, everybody knows, like Colorado, or early. We got snow in early archery season, which really
Yeah,
didn't.
we did too.
I guess I don't know statistically, but it seems like bow hunters. I don't want to say they're more prepared. I would imagine there's just fewer of them. But we've had fewer rescue missions kick off in archery season than we do in rifle season. But we also had a pretty significant a few snows in first rifle that stranded. People they haul in massive fifth wheel campers and whatnot, and there was no hauling them out. I mean, it dumped a lot of snow in the backcountry. So
That sucks.
You never are going to be able to adequately predict the weather. And if you haul a big camper into the backcountry and it snows, you're just going to have to be prepared to leave it. And that's essentially.
Yeah, man. I have a buddy down in Utah. Those real high elevation mountain kind of areas that we used to hunt down there. He drug his trailer up there, and it exactly what you said. And it wasn't like some big monster fifth wheel or anything, but it was a decent sized camping trailer. Got it stuck and was able to get his truck out and left his trailer there. And his only hope was basically going to go back and get it in the spring when the snow melted. Well, during the winter, the snowmobilers went up there and decided to make like a jump out of his trailer and totally destroyed the thing. And so
Wow.
something crazy. But no, that's one of the interesting things you said there is you don't see as many rescues during the archery season as you do for rifle season. I imagine you're right. It's probably there are less archery hunters. But I don't know. There could be a mindset thing there in terms of preparation, and it's just I don't know how that plays out. Are you ready for my second question?
Yes, sir.
Because this one's really important. How soon can I expect you to put an APB out for the Rifle Police Department to know not to pull me over and give me a speeding ticket when I'm coming through town?
I'll
Is that the right term? You going to do an APB or whatever?
Yeah, we'll be on the lookout. So.
All right, John, it's your turn to describe your perception on hunting prior to becoming a hunter.
All right. So growing up, my dad had gone hunting a couple times, brought some deer home. I was always intrigued by it, but it just never seemed to fit into the schedule growing up. And then I had my buddy growing up who I went hunting with, and I was always extremely interested in it. Wanted to go, but growing up in Northern California, there's so much private property.
Yeah.
When I went with my buddy, him and his dad, they paid for a lease so they can go hunt a piece of property in the fall for deer season. So, I never really had a chance to go, but I always wanted to, and it was always just a big, a big dream, pretty much, I guess you would say, to go out and then, it's moving to North Idaho, pretty much just everything just fell into place, and
and you're up in an area you don't have to go very far to get into some good hunting. So
this year, go ahead.
Just a side question. Do you fish that Ponderay Lake quite a bit?
Do I what? Fish it?
Yeah.
Oh, that lake. It's huge. It's too much. I have a 12-foot boat. No.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't go out in that thing on that lake.
I have to check the weather. I have to check the wind. I have to check it previous. I have to check future, and then I'll go out for 2 hours.
For people that listening that don't know, Ponderay Lake is in North Idaho, and it's a monster lake. And I mean, it's so big they do like submarine acoustical training in it, and it's 1,100 feet deep, and it's a pretty intimidating lake. And I have a heck of a time fishing it. I can catch fish everywhere else, but on that lake, I really struggle. So I always have to ask people how they do on that one. But
It's a big one.
So like you brought up a point, John, that makes me question, and we'll kind of describe this, but like what was, as being an adult and all of a sudden, okay, for John, I moved to North Idaho and all of a sudden hunting seemed like it made sense, but like what was that straw that broke the camel's back for you? What triggered you to say, okay, I'm getting hunter safety, I'm buying my first tag, and I'm going out hunting?
So I went through hunter safety in California when I was probably 15. So my dad had hopes of taking me and my little brother and my stepbrother out hunting, and it never happened. But I had my hunter safety there, and I bought my license. I think my hunting license in California 3 times to hunt 4. It was 3 different years, and I hunted twice one year, and then one time I went with a buddy duck hunting, another time to go pig hunting, and I only ever fired a couple, shotgun rounds out at some ducks, but so I had my hunter safety course, and then so I moved up here, and our first year when we got here, we moved up Labor Day weekend in 2018.
Right there at hunting season. That's
exactly. And so we got into town. I'm seeing people loading their guns up in their truck, just out in the open. Completely nothing like California, and I'm like, man,
was that like
I'm missing out? Yeah, I'm like, I'm missing out.
These Idaho rednecks, they're just walking around with their guns.
Well, and that's and so my buddy's dad, who really put the light in my eyes, I guess you would say, about wanting to hunt and hunting. He said that's how it was in Northern California when he grew up. Everybody had guns in their truck. Deer season was open. And after school, everybody went deer hunting. That was, and then, so and then also, I'm like, man, I'm missing out on all this, great opportunity. Yeah, I steelhead fish in California, but it's not, I have to wait for it to rain and the fish to come in and, the whole 9 yards. And but I've been enjoying. That's
kind of what did it. You were suspicious that you were going to enjoy it. And finally you moved to an area where it was a little bit more, I guess, easier to get into it in a lot of ways, a lot more public land, a lot more opportunity. And that's kind of what pushed you over the edge, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
How about you, Mike? Do you have something that like was that trigger point?
Yeah, it was a pretty quick progression. Like I bought a more modern bow and was doing some 3D stuff. And then at that time I was on patrol, so I was like chewing through podcasts, working a 12-hour night shift. I would mow through podcasts like no other. And I got kind of sucked into the back when the gritty bowmen were going on, and listening to Aaron Snyder, who got the shop here in Colorado, Kafaru, and I was looking at one of their backpacks. Yeah, and I was looking at one of their backpacks anyway for backpacking, for the durability of it, and listening to him talk, I mean, very, very much, intrigued me about backpack hunting and archery hunting at the time. So it seemed like it was kind of that culmination of listening to some of the podcasts about it, really kind of sparked the interest. I was already kind of shooting the bow and shooting at foam animals, so I thought, well, I think I'm just going to go. And at that time, also I'd gotten enough years on at work where I've got a ton of free. I'm not married, no kids, and a boatload of vacation time every year, so I can really pick when I want to go and what time off I want to. So it kind of was like that perfect storm, and everything hit at once, listening to the podcast, shooting some 3D stuff, and then having more of an open schedule.
Good deal. That's super interesting. I imagine you have lots of freedom to hunt. That's Will, you had talked about how you had made the call to Johnny Mack, and he kind of got you started at that point. What triggered you to make that call, and what kind of set you off to make that decision to become a hunter?
Yeah, so the big thing for me, it's a little deeper for me. So for me, it's more the provider life mentality. I'm the main breadwinner in my house. We made that choice when me and my wife got married once we had kids. I got a couple of successful businesses that I'm partnered in. I work some pretty grueling hours sometimes to keep them going, but we chose to sacrifice that so she can stay home and be with the kids and they can have their mom full time. And for me, it's about, I came to the realization in 2019 through some deep conversation with my wife about figuring out exactly what I'm here to do, what my purpose in life is. And I came to the conclusion that it's being a provider. I'm my happiest when I'm providing, when I'm doing for others, or anything to that extent. And I've always wanted to hunt, but then I thought about the idea of, well, I mean, right now I make the money and make it so she can go to the store and she can buy meat and put it on the table. But how cool would it be to go full circle?
Yeah.
And put that meat on the table. And we live a pretty clean and healthy lifestyle, as far as diet and all those things are concerned, and have since my first was born. My wife's big into that. We're kind of into homesteading right now.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, on our property, we actually sold our first house we bought after just 2 years, and we bought a fixer on a little bit of acreage, and we've been doing that whole thing. With this last year, we processed our first meat chickens, and we got egg laying chickens, and she's big into gardening.
Oh, that's cool, man. We could do like a whole podcast just on that, because
we absolutely could. And then she actually, consequently enough, the coolest thing about probably this last year, other than me hunting, is she actually did her hunter safety certification as well, because she wants to get into waterfowling. So we'll have a little bit of opportunity. And I know Johnny's wife did it as well, and Meg's and my wife have become pretty good friends. So
yeah,
that's what really drove me into it. And then being vulnerable, I made intent in 2020 to make myself vulnerable, to take chances and put myself in uncomfortable situations to build new relationships, because it was time to cleanse some relationships in my life, wipe away some stuff, create some new circles. And 2020 was definitely a ride of doing that. So, Johnny actually reached out to me initially. We had a mutual friend who I met, who became one of my better friends. He mentioned to me about Johnny and Washington backcountry, and through mine and Drew's conversations, he had mentioned Johnny 100 times. But he just happened to bring up that Johnny founded Washington backcountry, and that was kind of their motto, their efforts. Mentorship is conservation. So he told me to look him up on social media. I looked him up on social media, added Washington backcountry on Instagram, and literally within 2 minutes, Johnny messaged me. He slid into the DM, so to speak, and he said, "Hey, you're Drew's buddy. I heard you're interested in getting into hunting." And we just started chatting, and then he just said, "Well, call me, dude, if you want to. I'm just sitting here running on the treadmill, so if you don't mind listening to me panting on the treadmill, give me a call." And then we had about an hour conversation, and then it was I'm an all-in guy, so it was both feet in from there on.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. I'm messaging. We lost John here. I'm just messaging him right now. It looks like he somehow got disconnected there. I can't talk and type. That is really good stuff. I like the thought process that you put behind all this, and Mike, you too, because you guys both. This is not like some surface level thing for you guys. It's deep. It's thought out. Is that John? Jonathan, did we get you?
Yep, I'm back.
Okay, sorry, man. I don't know what happened there.
Oh, it's the North Idaho internet.
Yeah, welcome to the club, buddy. Don't ever start a podcast in North Idaho unless you live in town. That's all I'm going to say, because. But no, what I was talking about there, John. I was just telling Will and Mike that I love the heaviness of your guys' decision to and we all have different reasons why we come to this. I never came to it because I and that's why it's so interesting to me, is because it's just always been a part of me, right? And it's just, and so I don't have like this heaviness about it because it's just always been there. And so it just is. It is what it is. It's just my life. And Will, you have an interesting take with the providership, and how you want to support your family, and how you guys want to have that kind of almost that homesteading side of it, where you're able to provide everything yourself on your own sustainable property. And my wife and I are trying to do that, and it's kicking our butt, honestly, but we're trying to get
it's a lot of work. I mean, my wife she spent this last year while I was out hunting. We actually have a commercial freeze dryer at our house.
Oh, nice.
So she actually prepared all of my backcountry freeze dry meals. And she did a ton of stuff for future stuff for around the house. And she's big into canning and all that stuff. So it was like a apocalypse preparation in my house for pretty much the entire hunting season. And
the way the last year has gone, it's not a horrible place to be.
It's not. It was at some point where it's like, at one point, do I step in and say, maybe we should have an intervention here because you're going a little bit insane. But but I'm big into it as well. So this year we're actually going to be taking a 10 or 12 day road trip with the kids and doing a little bit of traveling and coming through Idaho. So maybe we'll get a chance to meet. I can stop by and actually meet you in person.
Yeah, come by and give me some pointers on how to make this garden work, because I'm a failure. Hey. My wife and I are failure. The only thing we grow great on our property are huckleberries, and that's because they're wild and we don't do anything. Winter is a great time to get stocked up, geared up, and dialed in for this coming hunting season coming up in 2021. So I want to save you guys some money. And first off, let's start with Hoffman boots. Hoffman boots are the boot of choice at the Western Huntsman, and Hoffman boots used to be like this little North Idaho secret with their hunting boots. But these boots are great boots. They won't cost you as much as some of the other top name brands out there, but they are every bit as good. And to save it even a little bit more money, I want you to type in the promo code Huntsman10 to save you 10% off at checkout. Now, I got to give you a fair warning real quick up front with Hoffman boots. They're like 6 weeks out right now on orders because everybody is jumping on the Hoffman boot train, and you should too. Next, I got Scree Gear, extreme mountain gear. This high-performance hunting attire and gear is specifically tested for camel patterns throughout the North American continent, and it's backed by a great company. Guys, Scree has a great history. I tested this gear all last season, and I put that gear through the ringer, up and down, left and right, to and fro. Save you a little bit of money. Use promo code The Western Huntsman at checkout to save you 15% off and free shipping. That's a hell of a deal. Check out Scree Gear, ScreeGear.com. It'll be in the show notes. Last and certainly not least, Phelps Game Calls, the choice, the selected call company of the Western Huntsman officially for 2021. Guys, there's some big things happening with Phelps Game Calls, and I can't say enough good things about this company. What a story. Started in just like this workshop, and now it's one of the premier hunting call companies out there on the market. And if you haven't tried Phelps Game Calls, you're really missing out. You really are missing out on those diaphragm elk reeds. They are amazing, and the amp frame is an absolute game changer. Check it out at Phelps.com and use promo code Huntsman10 at checkout to save you 10%. Let's get back into the conversation, guys. Thank you to our sponsors, and thank you for supporting our sponsors. Here we go.
We love the berries over here. It brings the bears in, man.
Yeah,
find the bears, find the bears.
That's right. I like your thinking.
But we're actually going to do a little bit of a road trip because we're actually looking in this next couple of years to acquire some serious acreage somewhere and actually start building a bit of an off-grid place. So
yeah. Well, good for you guys. We need to keep in touch because I'd love to talk more about that.
For sure.
The one question that always sticks out in my mind with all three of you guys, was hunting love at first sight, or was this something that it took a little time to grow on you? And I don't care who answers first.
I can jump in here. For me, it was um, the process getting to my first hunt, which happened to be with Johnny and his hunting partner Tony, and then a buddy of ours, Clint Easley, with Rebel Entertainment. The process leading up to it, doing safety certification, and then like figuring out everything that you need. Right, it's that whole a good piece of advice I got once, the whole buy once, cry once. Try and get what you need when you need it. I had this whole idea before I had even met Johnny or before it developed anything, that I was going to be doing more of like the out of the truck style hunting, not like road hunting, but setting up base camp. We'll put some miles in, but not trekking in, more of a day hunting. So I bought a ton of gear, kind of like perceived around that. And it was, I mean, there are so many wormholes you can drive down on the internet and hunting groups and stuff to figure out what you need and where to go, and scouting and Onyx and all this stuff. And then when my first hunt ended up being with Johnny and them on a 4-day backcountry hunt for Washington black bear in August. We went 9 miles in to set up base camp. I had to pretty much flush my entire plan leading up to it, get a whole bunch of new gear for the backcountry. And it wasn't until we made it to camp that I was completely hooked. I joke about how the first mile and a half of that hike in, because I was not a backcountry hiker either. I mean, that was the longest backcountry hike I'd ever been on, and we had full camp on our back, so we had 45 pounds. And I found about every reason in that first mile to just say, hey, turn around now, man. It's not too late. But once I hit camp and we hunted for those 4 days, it was the absolute most life-changing experience, aside from seeing my kids born, probably, that I've had.
And that was your first hunt trip out, right? So
Ever.
And so that could be summed up as, for you, it kind of was a love at first sight kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And now you've got this mindset that this is what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Oh, for sure.
John, what about you? Was hunting like this love at first sight thing, or how does that look in your mind?
It's still intimidating.
Well, let me tell you, I just turned 40 years old, been doing hunting my whole life. It's still intimidating to me. So, I mean, yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah. So last year when I did harvest my first big game animal, it was love at first sight at that point. When I realized this is coming home, I'm putting meat in the freezer. We didn't have to buy meat in my.
Was that a deer or an elk or a?
It was a deer. It was November 1st last year, 2019, opening day, mule deer season, and here in North Idaho.
You got a muley, huh?
Wow.
Yep.
You know that getting a mule deer in North Idaho puts you in like a pretty unique club. There are not a lot of them up here.
Yeah. I found out once I took it to what's his name? John, the taxidermist there
in Coeur d'Alene?
Naples.
Oh, Naples. I don't know.
I can't remember his name right now.
But he explained that we used to be packed full of mule deer up here, and now they've just been out.
Yeah. He said cool. It was the first one in 3 years that he's seen from North Idaho.
Awesome. So love at first sight, you think?
Yeah, I would have to say it. And then once I looked at the 4 mile drag back, I was like, this is great.
Then it turns into hate at first sight.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, what was I thinking? You drug a mule deer 4 miles?
Yeah, it just snowed, so there was a nice, and we were just right off a logging road. You know how it is up here.
Oh yeah.
So
I guess that wouldn't be too bad, but it's not a horrible idea to quarter that stuff out every once in a while when you're 4 miles.
I'll do that next time, most definitely.
That's awesome.
I brought my little day pack. I didn't have the pack I have now that can actually haul meat.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'm doing a trip back to the truck regardless if I'm hauling, if I'm quartering this out. So
that is cool. That is way cool. Yeah. Hauling a deer out 4 miles. That's pretty impressive, buddy.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, Mike, you're up, man. How do you look at hunting? Was it love at first sight? Was it something that took some time to grow on you? Kind of describe that for us.
I would not say it was love at first sight. The first hunting I did was turkey hunting, which I enjoyed, but I didn't get a turkey. But I mean, I had fun. It was wasn't a sufferfest. It was just day hunting, and I had a couple turkeys gobble, and I did get to see one, but that was about the end of it. And then I rolled into getting ready and deciding to go big game hunting, and I really enjoyed the process of getting ready, of the kind of doing some scouting, and I had most of the gear already, but it was just gear selection. I really liked that part. And then when I got out there, it was just the lack of success, like not hearing, anything. And part of it was probably getting lulled into a different reality. I really got into. I went through Corey Jacobson's Elk 101 and really enjoyed Chris Rowe's stuff. So I was kind of chewing through that, and I'm thinking, man, these elk are everywhere. It's great. And then I get up there and there's nothing. And it was that whole season. I didn't see an elk track, and I didn't have any, again, being a solo hunter, no one to bounce anything off of. As to, there's one guy on our search and rescue team. His name's Eric Wheeler, and he was really encouraging, like when I would, get out of the backcountry and be pretty down, he would say, just get back in there, or, find another spot or whatever. But the second season, I ran into a lot of ATV and crowding issues in the area that I was the only one in the year before. So.
Oh, wow. It's crazy how that could change in 1 year, isn't it?
1 year, it was, and it's not easy to get in there. It was a trek to get back in there. And I went in for the second season. I'd hunted and second time I'd hunted elk, tons of people back in there. Then, I'm pretty friendly with the game warden here. He's my neighbor, just a great guy. And he said, well, check out this other area. So I ended up hiking in there, and I did hear, it could have been a hunter, but I heard something bugle, and that got me. I was like, this is awesome. And then this year, up to this point, still not successful in any form. I do a lot of bow hiking, and the rationale largely towards the end of hunting season becomes, I can hike year round. I don't need to buy a tag and go and wait and go hiking in September. I can do that year round. But this year, I actually was able to call in a spike. I got into into some cows, and I had a bunch of elk bugling. It's been like this steady progression from the first time I went seeing absolutely nothing to this last time I went actually getting into some elk. So it's all that, there's so many moving parts. It's the timing of it is probably some of the most crucial, and it's not just the timing of like when the elk are going to be active. It's when are you going to have less hunting pressure, and you're trying to fit all those pieces together. But this year was the closest I've been, so it's that little bit of encouragement that keeps me, and I'm more fired up this year than ever because I did, have those interactions with elk. That it just every year it seems like I'm more committed. I'm more committed going into the following season.
There is, Mike, in my opinion, nothing that will motivate you to pursue further into the rabbit hole of hunting than a screaming bull elk. It's an undescribable feeling, and that is super cool. One question was, when you said you called in that spike, was that spike bugling?
No, I'd kind of hiked up into a very small clearing, and to take a break, and I just did a couple mews on a cow call, and all of a sudden I didn't know what was. I mean, I heard branches breaking, there's nothing quiet about it. I mean, these other guys, there's nothing quiet about an elk moving through the forest.
Nope.
And I was like, what the heck? And sure enough, this thing came running and was looking around. So I hit just a couple more mews on my cow call, and he came in. I took some pictures of him. It's a 4-point or better on antlered elk here. So there was
gotcha.
he came within 20 yards. It was really neat. I mean, I was so pumped. And then the last day I could hunt, I got into I was about in the middle of 5 elk just ripping bugles at last light.
Man,
I've just never. I mean, it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I've never experienced anything like that, and it just it was incredible.
It is incredible. I live for those moments. I mean, I'm not kidding you when I say that. I live for those moments. And it's just something else. When do you got Will and John? Are you guys elk hunting as well? Or are you guys mainly deer hunting?
Yes, I am. I am elk hunting as well.
All right, cool. And are you guys what kind of elk hunting are you guys doing? Are you guys doing rifle, or are you doing archery, rut hunts, or late season?
This year I'll be doing archery. I actually went out, like I said, late archery with my hunting partner Doug, who had he had a late season tag up here, 3-point or better. We got within 40 yards of a cow elk, and we had just missed the herd. It was fresh frost on the ground. Once the daylight came up, we realized there were about 30 or 40 fresh bed marks that you could tell because the frost was melted.
Awesome.
And I actually saw Johnny had arrowed his cow elk 1 week prior to that in the same spot. We actually found his gut pile. That's the first
still
time.
there.
Yeah, it was untouched.
I was about to say the same thing.
It was the craziest thing. It looked like it hadn't even been touched.
And it was a month later?
It was 1 week.
Just a week later.
Yeah, just a week.
It's still surprising that it's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Coming from us in North Idaho.
It definitely is. But to tell you the truth, I got such an itch being on that, even though I didn't have a tag. And to be honest with you, I wasn't even into archery yet. And as soon as I got back in December, I actually got passed down a nice bow from Johnny's hunting partner, Tony, who's in our group, because he's moving up. And I've been shooting like crazy. And literally, I just had my phone pulled out because one of the top goals that I wrote in my phone for this year was to archery elk hunt and to hear an elk bugle for the first time.
Cool.
So I'll definitely be. I got the itch for sure.
I'm excited for you, man. Like I said, there's no experience, whether hunting or non-hunting, that will just hit your soul the way a bugling, screaming, slobbering, eyes rolled back in his head bull elk will do to you. It's just insane. So
even the videos you find on the internet can do that to you.
Oh, for sure.
They're wild.
Yeah, and you said you were too, John. You're doing elk season during September, or?
Oh yeah.
Oh, sweet.
So last year I did rifle season. So it was October. Saw a lot of sign, no elk. Then this year, early spring, I decided to switch it up and try to hunt the rut. Opening day, we had a bull come in about 75 yards. And then the next day we had a big one come in. Yeah, it's nothing like a bugling elk. Yeah.
I mean, I'll just from my perspective, John, like in North Idaho, I don't know how rifle hunters are even successful here. It's so broad.
I don't either. And that's the thing.
I would not know how to hunt an elk in North Idaho with a rifle. You can't see them unless you call them in, and in my opinion, but anyway, no, that's
well, and that's so we went out. My buddy and I went out. So I have, this year I got the rifle tag as well, but I went out the first week during archery season.
Yeah.
And we had, bulls coming in, and then during rifle season we went out, and it makes you nervous when there's gunshots just everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sounds like D-Day.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Uh-huh.
So the question that a lot of this leads me to, guys, is when we're talking about getting into hunting, and now you guys all sound, I could just tell by the tones in your voices that you guys are super passionate. All three of you are fired up about hunting, and I feel like all three of you are also going to be good stewards to the hunting community, and pass on that torch and joining this group of folks that we just we follow these primal instincts and we get out there and we want to hunt, and that's part outside of our families. That's what we live for. And so one of the questions I have that I wrote down here, because I did write a series of questions here that I wanted to ask you guys. Mike, let's start with you, because it sounds like you didn't have like an actual hunting mentor. You didn't have somebody that took you out and like really kind of showed you the reins kind of scenario. You know what I mean? And so can you expand on that? Did you have any kind of mentor that actually took you out, or how did that happen for you?
Not one that took me out, but I did know people that hunted. They have their own, their own friends that they hunt with, and their own groups and schedules and so on. So, but they were there, especially like I said, Eric and buddy Justin at work, were more than willing to, give me tips, or I'd show them stuff on a map. I said, hey, what do you think of this spot? Or, when should what chunk should I take off of the hunting season? Do I want to deal with the muzzle loaders being out there, or how much attention should I pay to moon phase? I mean, there's so many different things you can go down. So I had some people I could bounce ideas off, but when the rubber met the road, when it was time to throw the pack on and start walking, it was just me. So I relied pretty heavily on the internet. I mean, I listened to podcasts. I did a couple of those online elk hunting, courses that I think were definitely helpful. Again, I really liked Chris Rowe's calling stuff, and then when I just hit the cow call and I got a elk to come in, I was like, man, that's money, right?
You're like, man, that Chris Rowe knows what he's talking about. All of a sudden, an elk came
right. So I that was basically it, and it's just been the trial and error, I guess. And I'm not going to say there's not some frustration when I see somebody post on the internet that, hey, I bought a bow at Bass Pro and went out and killed an elk. Never done it before. I'm like, man, I've been killing myself, with trying to.
Yeah, that's always frustrating. There's always, and I say this a lot on the podcast here, right? There's always, I hear it every year, somebody just experiences, it's like they really lived right that year or something, and God was like, I'm going to put an elk right off the road for this guy. And they get out of their truck, walk 10 feet, and there's a 300 class bull elk standing there. And when they shoot it, it rolls down the hill, guts itself, and lands right in the back of their truck. And that you're going to always hear those stories, by the way. That just it frustrates me too, because I have never ever been that lucky. It is always serious work to get to the point of notching my tag. You know what I mean? And so that's funny you say that. How about you guys?
And I think
go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was going to say I think that's why listening to some of the podcasts, they don't hide from that. If you listen to Remy Warren or Aaron Snyder, they definitely say, hey, yeah, we got something, but it was a ton of work, or it wasn't just a gimme. It was there was a lot of, which helps. It's like I'm not the only one out there who's struggling. So
yeah, for sure. What about you, Will? What can you talk about having a hunting mentor and what kind of impact that had on you?
It was tremendous. I mean, Johnny has his hunting partner, Tony Ellersick, who I've had the privilege of hunting with, and I've kind of become a member of kind of the Washington backcountry family with my hunting partner, Doug, and a couple other guys. So it's been really cool to be along on the journey. They've provided a lot of firsts for me. They're a group of guys who I can lean on. I mean, I can text Johnny anytime and get information from him or from Tony or Clint or Doug or any of those guys. So it's, for me, being a mentor or being mentored is about being part of a community, and a group of guys who are just willing to be open and lend support. And Johnny's been that for me all last year. And he actually introduced me to Doug, who I went on the elk hunt with, and we've become good friends, and we're going to be hunting partners this year and hopefully moving forward. So
good deal.
Awesome. The idea is kind of to shift. We're all mentors to each other in some sort of way. I mean, if you have conversations with Johnny about his mentored hunts that he sent up, like when he took me out, he took Doug out on his spring black bear hunt with Tony last year. That was Doug's real first backcountry hunt, was with them. And Johnny talks all the time about how he's learned stuff from the people he's mentoring when he's out with them, taking new guys out and not realizing maybe, for instance, the physical aspect of it. I mean, we went 9 miles in for our backcountry black bear hunt. I've had a couple of low back surgeries. I had a hip surgery, and I'm in pretty good shape, but there were questions about whether it could happen. But then you get out there and you do it. That's kind of, you earn your nicknames when you're on the hunt. That's where they're all developed. But he started to realize, he's like, man, when we got back, I didn't even realize, like, thinking about the physical portion of it and just taking somebody out on something like that, not knowing if they're going to make it or they're not. Mm-hmm. And then what to make the mentored hunts about. So I don't think that you should always be learning. So as much as he's teaching me stuff along the way, and Tony is, and he's put me in contact with you, and now I've met Mike and Jonathon, and they're learning from me too, and from other people. They don't know everything. I don't know everything. So for me, what it's provided mostly is just a sense of community, and a sense of comfortability in the industry, if you will, or in the network of hunters. So being able to have this conversation with you, Jim, who, like you said, you've been doing it. You've just been doing it. It's just what you know. And Mike's, later in life, and he's gotten into it, and Jonathon's doing it. And, for you, having been hunting your whole life, to still have that mentality now to want to mentor and kind of build the community and get people involved. I think it's pretty cool to realize it and want to do it when it's something that has just been natural to you.
Well, I appreciate that, Will, and I want you to hold that thought for a minute for the next question, kind of along those lines. So, because the part of the goal with this episode is, I want veteran hunters that they may have suspicions about somebody that they know that wants to get into hunting, and they haven't taken them under their wing. And I want hunters out there that I always look at it like me. Like, I am not a prolifically successful hunter, right? I don't go out and notch every tag I get by any means, and very few hunters do. But I can sure as heck take somebody that's never done it, and I can teach them in a way that builds a fire and a passion, because that's what it is for me. This is a fire and a passion, and it's important to me. And so part of the goal of this episode is I want hunters to think about that. Who can you take out and add somebody that is valuable to this community, and create a passionate new hunter, and get them fired up about this thing called hunting, and I think that's important. So I want you to hold that thought for a minute, because John, I don't know. We've talked a lot. I haven't heard you bring up like a mentor or somebody that kind of took you under their wing to get you started in this. Can you talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah. So, my buddy's dad, he was a big mentor in my hunting. Well, I lived in California, and then we moved away, I moved away to South Lake Tahoe for some years, and then moved here to North Idaho. And so moving up here, I've got a buddy named Ben, and he he's really taken me under his wing and showed me a lot. He's born and raised here in North Idaho.
Did you say you cut out just a minute there on my end there? Did you say you got a buddy named Ben that does that? He's taking you out?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. Here in North Idaho, and he's who I went out archery hunting with this year, and helped me call. We called some elk in, and it's so I would probably say Ben has been my mentor in being a successful hunter up here.
Okay, so the question that this kind of drives me to is when you guys look at it. Actually, let me back that up because I want to set this question up in a way so that you guys understand. For somebody like me that takes a brand new hunter out into the woods, sometimes we don't know what they don't know. Does that make sense? And
Absolutely.
I want to bridge that gap. I want to know what they don't know so that I know what is important to teach a new hunter. And so when you're let's take your new hunter hats off now and put on a teacher's hat and describe what you think a mentor should know about teaching a new hunter. Does that question make sense?
Absolutely.
All right. Who wants to take that on first?
I'll take it first.
All right. That's Will, right?
So, no, it's Jonathon.
That's Jonathon. Okay.
Maybe just reading sign and kind of showing them what to look for and what is, what's old, what's new, territory where you have been successful.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, obviously the wind, thermals, weather, all of that, it's hard to really put it into.
It's hard to pinpoint specific things, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Make it short and sweet. I mean, you spend a full day with somebody, you can lay out, a pretty good base for them. But, obviously I feel like sign is probably one of the biggest things because, I came across sign that I thought was fresh and new, and wasn't until I went out with my buddy Ben. He's like, oh no, that's 2, 3, 4 weeks old.
Yeah, and that's a good way to put it, Jonathon. In terms of like when you got back from a hunting trip, and whether you had a mentor with you or not, and anybody can answer this, and that's what I'm driving at here is what went through your mind in terms of, gosh, man, I wish I would have known this, or I wish he would have talked about this or that, and that's kind of the information I'm looking to kind of get out of you guys, and the sign is always that. It seems like a super obvious one, but at the same time, sign is a really complicated thing. Wild game leave a lot of different types of sign in a lot of different ways, and sometimes that takes a long time to figure out what sign is. I'll give you an example. Like for bear sign, I've always looked at bear scat thinking that it was always a lot fresher than what it really was, and things like that. Mike, do you have a take on that? Like what you would teach a new hunter if you were a mentor?
Yeah, I think it goes really close to what Jonathon said. It's finding how much time do you give an area, because I really found myself, especially that first season, I put all my eggs in one basket and I never saw any indication that elk were there. And I don't know if mentally I thought, well, maybe they're going to show up, or are they going to come to the party, or do I, or I'll look maybe just over the little ridge. I just didn't plan a contingency. And I think trying to teach or convey to someone the timing of, hey, this spot isn't happening. Have another spot in your pocket to go to and know when to pop smoke on an area, because it can just be exceedingly frustrating when you really think, man, this is perfect elk habitat. There has to be elk in here, and they're not there. And just because it's perfect elk habitat doesn't mean they're going to come there. So
yeah, that's a great point.
I think that's a big thing because I think what can kill it for somebody new is just that frustration. of
Yeah.
of failure.
Yeah, for sure. No, that you put that perfectly, Mike, with along those lines, and that's a great point. And that's going to be super dependent too. Like, are you hunting high country mule deer or are you hunting rutting elk in September? And I could tell you right now, when it comes to rutting elk in September, if there is not super fresh sign and copious amounts of it, I'm popping smoke right then and there. Like in a matter of minutes. If there's not that there, I'm out. I'm out of there. I'll go 10 drainages 14 miles away and try somewhere else. But that's a great. That's from my perspective, that is not something I would have thought to tell somebody. And just like Jonathon was saying about, knowing the sign and the how old the sign is, those kinds of things, I wouldn't have thought to say that or teach somebody that, I guess. And so that's why I'm asking. Will, you got anything to add to that topic?
Yeah, actually, I kind of want to throw a curveball in here and go a little bit different direction with that, especially with kind of what worked best for me when I was out with the guys for 4 days. A couple things. One, like if you're going to be in a position to be mentoring somebody or potentially taking somebody out, I would highly recommend meeting with them and maybe doing like a pre-scout trip, not a hunt trip, doing something like a pre-scout and spending some time with that person.
Oh, I like that.
One, to kind of see their capabilities, but also see how they work. Because everybody, like me growing up, I worked the best by, I focus really hard on stuff and I pick up a lot of information just by watching, not by being told what to do. And then I try things. And Johnny has kind of a inside joke nickname for me. He calls me Silent Will because I almost didn't say anything on that 4 days that we were out there. Because I didn't know anything. So I was just listening to the guys. The second thing I would say would be mentoring along the emotional side of hunting, because there are crazy highs and there are crazy lows on the mountain. And teaching an individual to use those real small victories as real high moments for them to keep pushing on, whether it be seeing a 3-week-old track or whatever. We talk all the time about once you start to pick up those details like Mike and Jonathon are talking about, which are excellent points. Mm-hmm. Once you start to see those, the woods just kind of start to come alive. I did a pre-scout trip with the guys. We did a trail run, and I mean, Johnny and those guys will be like clipping along, running, and all of a sudden come to a dead stop. And they're like, I want to show you this sign. And it was like, I'm like brisk walking behind you guys and you guys are streaming by that and you pick it up. The woods come alive once you get out there and you start noticing that stuff. Yeah. And then the third thing was the best piece of advice that I was given on my mentor hunt was, look for something that doesn't seem natural. That came to spotting a bear. I actually spotted the first bear on our hunting trip, and I'd never seen a bear in the wild. And they knew what they were looking for, and it was actually on a adjacent mountainside, like through the thick. It wasn't even where we were heading. We just stopped on the trail and happened to glass across a valley onto a ridge. And I just happened to, out of the corner of my eye, notice a small black spot in a big, thick green meadow that just disappeared quickly. It wasn't a big spot. It was a small spot. It just disappeared. Mm-hmm. And I stopped while they continued, and then I locked glass on it. And next thing you know, that thing stood up. And I was like, guys, I got a bear. And they were like, where? And I show them. And literally it was just minutes before that Johnny told me, look for something that's not natural. We know how brush grows. We know how things tend to look an ear flick or just something that just doesn't look natural. Mm-hmm. It was the smallest piece of advice I got. And I was able to glass animals up from bucks to bears to marmots to all sorts of stuff on that trip.
Good deal.
So for me, it's in the small details. I feel like there's so much to learn when it comes to sign, as far as like how old it is, or scat, or rubs on trees. Like when I went elk hunting with Doug in December, that was the first time I'd ever seen rubs on a tree. And then I saw thrashing next to it, which led us to believe, okay, there's been a bull that's been through here, and those are fresh. That stuff just kind of starts to engrave in your mind, and you just start to kind of naturally get an eye for that stuff. But the biggest piece of advice I could give is definitely take them out and do something outdoor or activity related with them before you take them out.
That's really good advice. Will, I appreciate that. That's the other thing that you said that really struck me was talking about the emotional highs and lows of hunting. Mm-hmm. And I'd love to touch on that with people. And it's something that I do talk about a lot with folks, that, you know, hunting is a highly emotional thing.
And not to cut you off, sorry, but you don't when you take a new hunter out, like going on that hunt, that was very physically taxing and an extremely emotional trip for me. And that was my very first hunt ever. I'd never even carried a rifle in the wild, right? So, I mean, those little details are the difference between, I mean, if that's not a fun experience for that new hunter, what is the likelihood? Like if that trip rained on us and did all that and the trip sucked, I mean, what's the likelihood that I would want to willingly go out there and do that again?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the thing is you kind of have to be a hunter. You really do have to kind of have this certain level of joy that you get out of misery. And it's this weird combination because hunting can be very miserable, right?
Embrace the suck.
Embrace the suck. And I love that line. I've seen that as a hashtag, and it's true. You have to embrace the suck, and you have to, the emotional highs and lows that some people that never hunt, they'll never understand how quickly you could go from the lowest to lows to the highest to highs and then right back down to the lowest of lows. And the thing that you have to understand is that's just part of hunting. And it's that's going to change from day to day to minute to year to year, you know, and it is an emotional roller coaster. And it's because we put so much, I mean, look at it this way. Here it is. It's the beginning of January. It's cold. There's snow outside in most places. Maybe not for you, Will. But we're kind of stuck in the middle of winter here. And what are we doing? We're talking hunting. And hunting's coming. We've got spring turkeys and bear and all this stuff coming, and it's going to be here before we know it. And that's part of the drive here is we're all fired up about hunting and we're talking about it. And then I'm going to release this episode, and it's going to go out and it's going to get a ton of hunters out there that download this episode and listen to it. And they're going to send me emails and want to talk more about this and that. And I'm going to respond because I'm fired up about hunting. That's hunting. It's this emotional thing. It's not, and I've said this a million times, we're not collecting bottle caps. This is not that kind of a hobby. This is a lifestyle. Yeah. And we do have serious emotions about this. It's a lifestyle. It's a thought that is deeper than other hobbies where it's just you get some enjoyment. This actually fuels our soul, and we want to get out there and experience it as much as we can. And so those emotions are that's a great point to talk about. And so you guys, I know we're running a little bit long here, so I do have one more question though. And I think you guys are the perfect guys to answer for the listeners out there. Let's say we have somebody out there who's never been hunting, but they're thinking about getting into hunting. They're interested. They're getting excited. They're starting to learn things. They're looking into different weapons and seasons and tags and animals and all this stuff that kind of goes into becoming a hunter. Give us and let's start with you, Will, and I'll just go clockwise as to how I have you guys on my screen here. Give us what your advice would be most important to a first-year hunter.
To a first-year hunter, aside from potentially trying to reach out to somebody via social media or something and just make yourself vulnerable to that network, and maybe somebody you can lean on for advice. All the success is in the small details. So scouting is extremely important. Get real familiar with using things like Onyx Maps or whatever type of Google Maps and any type of that stuff you like to use for that, and do your homework. If you're gonna get out, I did a ton of homework with scouting and stuff before I went out on my own trips, and um, and I had some success and I had some serious lows. But the biggest piece of advice I could probably get is set realistic expectations, and that goes for both mentors and new hunters. Just make sure you have realistic expectations going into the season, so that you can ride that roller coaster of emotions and stay positive, and you'll do great.
That's awesome. The expectations thing is something that we talk about a lot on this show too, is having those realistic expectations. So, John, how about you? You're up next. Advice for a new hunter going out for their first season here in 2021.
Don't give up. Don't give up. If you have the drive, just keep going. Every time you go out in the woods, you will learn something new.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Just keep going, and catch on to consistencies. You'll start to notice where certain things are, certain things aren't. Start to notice that stuff. But yeah, just don't give up, more or less.
That's a great point. The way I described this one time, and this just kind of came to me out of the blue. This was a couple months back, but in terms of not giving up, you have to look at. We had just mentioned 10 minutes ago about embracing the suck, right? And just understanding the emotional roller coaster that goes up and down throughout the hunting season and all that. But you have to kind of look at it like from a financial perspective. You have to think of embracing the suck as paying out money, and you have to pay a certain amount of dollars out in order to start getting dollars back, right? And that's a huge part of hunting. You really do, with the exception of those folks that we were talking about earlier that they just bought their bow. I think Mike was talking about this. They just bought their bow, probably from Walmart, and went out and shot a 300-inch bull. That's all fine and dandy and everything. But for most of us, we have to pay out a certain amount of suck in order to get the glory back, right? And that is how that works. And so that's great advice, Jonathon. All right, Mike. We're on you. What advice do you give a first-year hunter going out for their first time in 2021?
I think Will and John really hit on some very key points. I think expectation management is going to be a key towards keeping someone hunting. I really think knowing your limitations, like really understanding what you're undertaking. If you're going to go after a mule deer, how far are you hunting with a group? Or are you hunting by yourself? How far can you realistically pack that thing out? And that stuff needs to happen in the planning stage, because otherwise you can be setting yourself up for some real heartburn in the long term. I think you just have to have that honest conversation with yourself of, if I do get something, am I going to be able to get it out on my own from this spot? And it's not a deal breaker. Like, just don't be afraid to go out and try it. Yeah, you may need to draw a circle on your hunting spot, a 3-mile circle, and say, this is the area that I'm going to hunt because this is where I can get an animal out if I need to. But that seems to be, at least for me, it's that process of if I kill something, I owe it to the animal and to myself for the work. I want the meat. I want to be able to get it all out and not waste any. So, and that means I'm not going to, in my condition, I'm not going to be 12 miles in and knock an elk down by myself. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. Gosh, I don't know if I could have picked 3 better dudes to come on this show and talk about this stuff. You guys are awesome. I appreciate it. This has been a great conversation, and I lied to you about that being the last question because one just popped into my mind. Mike, let's start with you. How has hunting changed you as a man?
I think it's probably hurt me at work because I I've been doing this job for a long time, and it requires a lot of time and everything else. And I saved up a ton of vacation time through the years, but it is just, and I might be that type of person in other aspects. When I was rock climbing, I kind of was an all in. Like I'd really when I got into something, it captured all my attention. But hunting is kind of place of a lot of other things, because I can do it by myself, so I think it's just that heightened focus. I spend a lot more time in the backcountry now because I scout pretty extensively in the spring and early summer. So and that's provided a good outlet for me from the stresses of work, to where I think I find myself a lot more relaxed on my time off from work, and when I do go to work, I'm far more fresh going through the door and ready to take what comes.
Yeah, that's great. That's great stuff, Mike. That's really good insight. I was telling you, I don't know. I don't want to get into some long story, but you guys in Rifle, Colorado are a different breed. Okay. I told you my grandpa, he was from Rifle, Colorado. And this was back in I'm getting old. So when he was in Rifle, Colorado, we're talking about, it's just coming out of the old Wild West days kind of thing. But in fact, I'll tell you what I mean by you guys are a different breed. You know how my grandpa died? He didn't die like normal grandpas die. Okay. He got in his truck in April and drove it up on a mountain, got it stuck in some snow, way back in the backcountry, and was extremely diabetic at this time in his life, and tried hiking off that mountain and died of hypothermia. We looked for days for my grandpa. It was all over the news and everything. And that's how my grandpa went out. And I wouldn't expect anything less from him. It was, painful at the time, but we're talking, that's a decade ago now. But I don't know why I really bring that up now, other than you being from Rifle reminds me of that. And everybody I've met from Rifle, Colorado has been very much along the lines of you guys are dedicated, you're serious about what you're doing, and there's just something about that little neck of the woods down there that leaves me with that thought process. So I appreciate it. Okay, going back, moving back on the scale here, Jonathan, how has hunting changed you, man?
You can just ask my girlfriend.
You spend more money. Man. Let me guess. You spend a lot more money.
Oh, well, we won't talk about that. Okay. She will listen to this later.
Okay. We'll just keep that off the books.
No, it's that's all I want to do. That's it. I want to, I got very lucky and fortunate and harvested a cougar as well, along with some deer, and just putting meat in the freezer. That's all I want to do. I just want to provide now. I want to hunt. Did you
eat the cougar?
Yeah. Of course I did. I just made 19 pounds of breakfast sausage.
Oh, did you really?
It's great. It's amazing.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yep.
I've never had cougar. Yep. I've never had cougar. So that's.
I highly suggest, if you get a chance to, eat it. It's very similar to pork. It's a little sweeter. Obviously, you have to cook it, to 160 degrees. They do have possibility of trichinosis because they are, carnivores,
just like bear.
So, yep. Did a lot of crock pot tacos with it. But it's.
I might have to call.
I want to do now.
If I get a cougar, I'm going to call you for some tips on how to cook them, basically, because I know nothing about them. Yeah, that's awesome.
Did you? I don't either. I was I'm a plumber doing a side job for someone, and they had a big run-in with a Tom, and it was a couple weeks later, and they called a couple guys to rent some dogs, and I was leaving the guy's house, and he got a phone call, and was like, hey, the guys I called, they got a big female tree. You got a tag? And I was like, yeah, and just went out and harvested a cougar.
Awesome. Cool, man.
Yeah, it was just
You saved
Luck.
some
Luck.
calves and some fawns doing that. So we appreciate
Yep.
you for sure. How about
Yeah.
Will? How about Will? How has hunting changed you?
So, hunting for me has provided me the ability to flush out aspects of my life, be it habits or relationships this last year that were preventing me from doing and going after what I truly want to be happy. I flushed some relationships out of my life. I got vulnerable. I created a really tight new circle of individuals who are brothers and family. And honestly, I found true happiness this last year.
I dig it. That's heavy, man. Because I think one thing that I don't know of when I look at people that have never hunted in their life, and I look at some of the directions they choose to take and the things that they choose to kind of pass the time, so to speak, outside of work and family and things, and I often wonder, without hunting, how grounded of a man I would be. What would occupy my mind if I didn't have hunting, and it's something that it's kind of bothersome to me in a way, and so not that I'm, not that I think that there's anything wrong with people that choose not to hunt. I really don't. It's just in my mind that is what grounds me. It gives me a really good solid sense of direction, so to speak, in life, and because it's this constant, it's like that North Star that's always up there that just kind of leads the way, and really that's what a lot of it is for me for hunting. It's this pursuit that never ends, and this question that never gets answered, and that without that kind of pursuit, what else is there? And I know that there are other things in life that can guide that and that can create that kind of impact on a person's life. But for me, it's hunting, and my life would be bleak without it, if that makes sense. And so you guys have offered some really good insight on this conversation. I feel like man, we had like 10 people write in that were really interested in this the first week. And I think you guys were all within that first week. And then it was funny. The second week after that elk panel episode was released, I had like 50 or 60 people write in. But you guys were in that. Yeah. So you guys were in that first group of 10. And I really liked your responses and the way that you talked about that and came up, with the exception of Will, I reached out to you because Johnny Mack had recommended that. And when Johnny Mack says something, I trust his word on that. And so that's kind of how this whole thing came about. And so I just appreciate you guys coming on. I feel like this was a great choice to have you guys on. Will, Mike, Jonathon. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I feel like you guys are really good representation of what hunters should be, whether you're a new hunter or a veteran hunter. And I appreciate you guys coming on the show to share your insights on this. And I think people are going to get a lot out of this. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks a bunch for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jim. I
appreciate it.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Might have to do like a check-in, like next year, after next season. Let's see how you guys still feel about hunting. Are you still fired up about it?
Oh my gosh, I can't wait for September.
Yeah. Who else was talking there? Somebody. Jonathon, was that you?
No, it was Will. I was just saying I'm going to come see you here in a few months when I pass through Idaho.
You come on through, man. I'm just north out of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. You come and see me, and
we're coming right through there.
Awesome. That's
get a hold of me too, there, Will.
All right, brother.
I'm just right there. I'm Jim's neighbor.
You got it.
So we're all up here in the Northwest, and we got Mike down there in Colorado. He's like, man, I'm pretty sure Mike's going to have to take a road trip and come see us in North Idaho too. We'll do an in-person reunion. Thanks again, guys, for coming on. This was awesome.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, for having us.
Thanks.
You made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. We sure appreciate your support. This is Jim Huntsman signing off and reminding you to check us out at Instagram at The Western Huntsman and on Facebook at The Western Huntsman. And you can also check out the website at thewesternhuntsman.com. Thanks again. We'll see you guys next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you on the mountain.